I just scribbled down 5 quick points. First of all, Moili, I want to say thank you. This is a privilege to be here. And I want to thank all 4 speakers. I have heard presentations on the post-2015 development agenda on a number of occasions. Perhaps you have too. But I think 1, 2, 3, 4, I've never heard it more clear. It's really very good. So congratulations. It's a very cumbersome process. And it's complex. And for those who don't do this on like a daily basis, it's like overwhelming. So well done. I think all 4 presentations were very good and very clear. So that was the first thing. I think the second quick point, which follows the first, I really hope that all of us stay in touch with each other, but these 4 presentations, I'm going to stay in touch with these 4 people a lot because they have their finger on the pulse, and it's very important because all of this stuff keeps changing quickly. I liked what I think it was in your presentation of, well, this was the way it was on July 12th. It may be different today. You know, it's just changing all the time. So it's really important, I guess, that we continue to network with each other and have open lines of communications. I can tell you absolutely member states do that. And some member states, may be supportive of these efforts and some may not be supportive of these efforts. So it's really important for those of us who are committed to these issues that we network with each other and stay in touch. I liked, I'm not sure which presentation it was, but there was a thing on the left side that talked about since 2010, really, 2011, 2012, we've been engaged in a set of 4 things: a process, the content, negotiations and debates, and agreements. The agreement will take place officially at the summit in September in New York, September 2015. So before that, there will also be agreements because no head of government will go to New York in September 2015 and concur on a document that he or she hasn't been told to sign off on. Okay? So agreements will be made before that. But where we are right now, we've gone through this broad process. We now have some real content, and now starts the ugly, or a deepening, I should say, of the negotiations and debate. So, and a lot of that, I think, this kind of a personal opinion, but a lot of that will take place in New York. And so I think it's really important, not exclusively, but I think it's very important that we realize that at the end of the day, much of this will be decided by Ministry of Foreign Affairs and their permanent missions to the UN. So it's really important that we continue to work with the partners that we work with at country level, oftentimes the Ministry of Education, more often Ministries of Health, but also Ministries of Foreign Affairs, because they need to be hearing that voice at country level to input into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, their ambassadors, their permanent representatives to the UN, because those are the men and women who sit behind the microphones and communicate their policies. So it's important to do all that we have done, but it's also important that we really find those personal relationships, those institutional relationships, those who have been in the Ministries of Health and who are now in Ministries of Foreign Affairs, those who are advocates in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who can kind of take that forward, because that will be an important ministry to influence. And that, my own experience, and Moili, you're correct, I've been in Bangkok as a regional director for the last 4 years, but I spent 6.5 years with UNFPA in New York as the global coordinator on AIDS. And it's very, very, very clear that on sexual and reproductive health and rights, maternal mortality, adolescent sexuality, comprehensive sexuality education for young people, what some of the member states say at country level doesn't filter into the New York level, and vice versa. So it's really important that we kind of monitor this process, because even some of our best friends at country level and our strongest advocates in government entities may not be heard or may not even know too well the channels on how to communicate. So I think that, and in a sense, it shouldn't necessarily be left up to a laissez-faire thing. It may actually need a strategy at country level, country by country by country, on how we're going to ensure good sound bites, good visions are passed along to Ministries of Foreign Affairs in the home country that are then also filtered in. to New York. I'm not sure which point I'm on now, but I just have two left. One thing that is useful to us, I think, is that the governing board, UNAIDS has two governing entities. The overall entity is ECOSOC. That's that 54 member state entity, the Economic and Social Commission. That that entity created UNAIDS, but the day in, day out governance of UNAIDS is the UNAIDS Program Coordinating Board. And it has been, this post-2015 development agenda has been on the PCB, the Program Coordinating Board, for the last 2 years. And they came out with a statement last year, and then just a couple of weeks ago in their July 4th, their July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th meeting, so a series of decisions came out on July 4th that called for an end of AIDS in the post-2015 development agenda. And then it went on to say, in addition to that, HIV should be mainstream or integrated into other key areas like sexual and reproductive health, young people, gender-based violence, access to justice, education, these other key 17 things that we've seen. So I think that that's also important. I think it's always important to think of partnerships as opposed to it's HIV, it's HIV, it's HIV. I think you did a nice job of talking about UHC and why it's important to find connectivity and partnerships there. Decisions of the PCB, which includes civil society on the board, but is intergovernmental by nature. So it includes governments and civil society, but it's an intergovernmental decision-making body. So those decisions carry weight. And I noticed our colleague Emmanuel from talking about how Africa has said, well, it must be member state driven. Well, there's a document that was negotiated on intergovernmental processes that talks about ending AIDS by 2030 and about integrating HIV into the broader economic and social development agenda. And that was passed along by the chair of the PCB, Australia, to the president of the General Assembly and to the Secretary General. So that's important ammunition, I'd say. It's important to know that that's in your holster or in your set of goods that you can access to, because that's an intergovernmental process that calls for that. And then I guess last thing, I like the dialogue on UHC. My own personal opinion is I like how you describe it, good UHC and bad UHC. I think that in my personal opinion, working here in Asia, most member states have committed themselves to universal health coverage by 2020. And some have already done that. The Philippines did it this year, Indonesia did it this year, Thailand's been at it for quite a few years, 17 years. In the case of Thailand, ARVs are paid for through the Universal Healthcare Coverage Scheme. They are in Malaysia. They are in the Philippines. At some point, Indonesia, I think, will also do that, but because of particular reasons, it's not yet included. So how do we talk about sustainability of financing? I don't think it's completely crazy to ensure that HIV is a good brother-sister with the Universal Health Coverage Dialogue and non-communicable diseases. I think we have to embrace that. We've heard many times this week about if I don't die of a lack of needle and syringe exchange or opiate substitution therapies, I'll die of hepatitis C or hepatitis B or HPV or whatever. So I think that I just had two friends die of HIV, and they both died of heart attacks because they were chronic smokers. And so smoking and alcohol and mental health issues, I think, are really, really important that we can all, I believe we should absolutely take up with them, but with the caveat that you really put nicely is that we have to be careful with the particulars of what do we mean by UHC. Is it just health for all, kind of like a slogan, or what does it really mean? And what would it mean for a person who is a transgender or a gay person living in a country where they can be flagged or jailed or killed because of their sexual orientation? So it's really, I think, important that we get into the details of that, but not necessarily to say that that's not acceptable, we can't go that way. I think it's a much better thing. And same thing would be for universal health, for sexual and reproductive health and rights. I think that those are our friends, those are our colleagues. We should be embracing that kind of concept. I'll stop there, but thank you, Marlee, for some really good discussions, and again, the panelists very helpful.